Thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm honored, and it's a real privilege to address this community. Again, my name is DeAnna Cummings. I'm one of the founders and the executive director of Juxtaposition Arts. Juxtaposition Arts is a youth education program, a teen-staffed design firm, and a locally rooted cultural development center based in North Minneapolis at the corner of Emerson and West Broadway. What I hope to talk to you a bit about tonight is not only what I do, but why the work is important, why we do what we do. Because a question I get asked quite often in community where folks are very much concerned with education and jobs and public safety and housing and other sorts of day-to-day concerns, why art? I'm hopeful that I'm going to answer that question with a number of different examples and tell you a little bit about Juxtaposition Arts work in the process. Juxta was founded by myself and two artists when we were in our early 20s, about 20 years ago actually. And we really started the organization to be the kind of place we wish we had access to as kids. We were the kind of young people that teachers and our parents and older adults often talked about and said, you have great potential if you would only apply yourselves. And the fact of the matter is that at a certain point in our development, and especially by the time we got to high school, we were much more engaged and intrigued by the real application of learning, as opposed to sitting in a classroom setting and hearing from people about what we should be learning. And we knew that there were many young people like us in North Minneapolis and actually all over the Twin Cities who were heuristic learners, who learned best by doing, by being mentored, and by having the opportunity to apply what they learned in a real life setting. Juxtaposition Arts serves young people 8 to 21 years old through a mentor apprenticeship program model, which is the oldest and most effective form of teaching and learning. Young people learn side by side with professional artists and apply those skills in real life settings. We work with about 3,000 young people a year, and we utilize a model that focuses on art making, art critique and interpretation, learning to talk about your work, learning to do public speaking, art exhibition and sales, and then the study of art history. As I said, nearly 3,000 kids a year participate at Juxta, and 60 to 70% of the participants are African American and Southeast Asian and live or go to school in the North Side. We work with kids from throughout the Twin Cities as well, because our program is really unduplicated in the region. So why art? The arts are a unique and accessible way to connect diverse people across shared goals. Many of us think about the arts and we envision high art, art with the capital A, right? Work that we see on walls or on stages. And we think of it as a nice extra, something that if you have everything else taken care of, then the arts are great. But in fact, when I talk about arts, I'm talking about arts with wide open arms, right? I'm talking about designs, I'm talking about temporary works, I'm talking about community events, I'm talking about ephemeral events. We're talking about culture and history, and the arts itself, if you really think about it, are very wide open, right? There are multiple right answers. There is more than one way to reach an end result. And everybody can participate in the arts. So the arts are really a very unparalleled way to connect with all kinds of people in a way that almost nothing else does. Engagement in the arts makes communities more beautiful, more safe, and more economically vibrant. And in fact, research will show that neighborhoods with a high arts presence are 3 times more likely to see poverty rates decrease and property values increase. For example, Juxtaposition Arts moved into a building at Emerson and West Broadway and rehabbed the space and opened up in 2004 after we had been nomadic for a number of years. When we moved in and opened up, there were vacancies around every component of our building, vacancies adjacent to us, north, south, east, and west. Since then, there's been $47 million in investment just on the 2 blocks between Emerson and Fremont along West Broadway. Organizations like Urban Homeworks have moved in, Emerge Community Development Corporation, the Minneapolis Public School District Building, the West Broadway Area Coalition. And the facts are that when the arts move into spaces that previously felt abandoned, vacant, a bit scary, they become places of possibility and hope. And vibrant places where people want to be. In 2009, we rehabbed another space on West Broadway and opened up a teen-staffed screen printing studio and retail shop where young people are working with emerging artists and designers, producing real products and services for clients. In 2012, we rehabbed another building and doubled the amount of space dedicated to the arts on our block of Emerson and West Broadway. The first floor of the building is program space, and the second floor of the building contains 9 adult artist studio spaces, private working studio spaces for artists. The progress of the development of Juxta's properties at Emerson and West Broadway reflects one of our fundamental values, which is start with what you have and make the most out of what you have while you're building toward where you're trying to go in the future. So we didn't wait until we had $10 million to rehab our buildings and make them into these beautiful spaces, state-of-the-art spaces. We started with what we had, we developed them as we can, and we put them into use immediately. The arts equip young people to thrive in a 21st century innovation-based economy. We employed 49 young people in 4 social enterprises at Juxtaposition Arts last year, again, where they're making real products and services for real clients. Some of the products that we're currently producing include a logo for a new bookstore in North Minneapolis, public artwork for the new Hennepin County Hub building located on Plymouth Avenue, and T-shirts for the Bush Foundation's conference that'll be at the Guthrie Theater in a few weeks. Our long-term goal is to be the largest employer, a year-round employer of youth artists in the Twin Cities. We intend to employ 150 young people a year in part-time jobs where they're making $7.25 to $10 an hour, again, where they're applying their skills and their creative genius in a real-life setting. These are logos by a Juxta graduate. 100% of young people that are involved at Juxtaposition Arts for at least 2 years in a sustained way graduate from high school. About 25 to 30% of those young people go on to college, and they go on to 2-year institutions and 4-year institutions. We have young people at the University of Minnesota, at MCAD, at Dunwoody, at many local schools. We also have young people at Oberlin and Parsons and the School of the Art Institute in Chicago and Harvard. I'll just tell you a brief story about this young man whose name is Alex Smith. And he first came to Juxta, he and a friend when they were in middle school. They came to do an interview with my 2 artist partners about graffiti art. They were really interested in the graffiti art movement, and they were doing a report for a local history contest about graffiti art. They won their school competition, they went on to a national competition, and they placed 3rd in that competition. And then they began to participate in everything we were offering over the next several years through high school. When Alex was 16 years old, he called his mom on a Friday night and he said, "I'm going to spend the night at Jonah's house." And his mom said, "Okay." And then he called her Saturday from Paris. And Alex had bought a plane ticket, got his visa, and on his own traveled to Paris to look at graffiti, to paint on trains, and to have this adventure that was really critical to his development. Of course, his mom was completely mortified. We were secretly proud, because that is exactly the kind of self-actualization that we are seeking to collaborate with young people for them to accomplish in their lives. Alex went on then to be a designer for Mecca, for Rough Riders, and created a company called Minnesota Nice, which he eventually sold to Rhymesayers Records, and you can buy the products at over on Hennepin Avenue in South Minneapolis, and now he has a company called Minnesota Ice. Jonah went on to graduate from Harvard a couple of years ago. Why arts? The arts activate space and make our aspirations and our assets visible. This is critically important in communities that have been traditionally described in terms of deficits and disparities. Murals do a great job of visualizing our assets and our aspirations. And in fact, research shows that murals are a fantastic way to improve community without gentrifying communities. So from everything I've said so far, I hope you have the impression that the arts are a win, 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 win. Everybody wins, right? And that's true. However, there's a few cautions I would make. Not all arts are created equal. And in fact, research shows that when arts are not rooted in local communities that they inhabit, in fact, the arts can further exacerbate disparities in communities, can further disconnect people. Professor Seifert and Stern researched this phenomenon, and they came up with 3 reasons why our sort of idea about arts-based community development actually has some real fundamental flaws. One of the reasons is that we have a tendency to tolerate dislocation in exchange for supposed increased economic vibrancy. We're okay with that, many of us are. A second reason is a misperception that arts and creativity are the product of individual genius versus really being the product of our collective genius. And the third reason is there is virtually no rigorous examination of the role of race and class as it relates to arts-based economic development. We can't gloss over this idea that artists move into community and create place, although people were already there. So this sort of idea about placemaking as it connects to things like manifest destiny and other policies for improving place that actually haven't always been so beneficial to the people that were there in the first place, right? One of my mentors who I look up to tremendously and Juxtaposition Arts really wants to be like someday is an organization called Project Row Houses out of Houston. Rick Lowe, the executive director and founder of Row Houses, said at a recent talk he gave, it's relatively easy to come to a place. It's much more difficult to come to the people. And that's really the key to arts-based community development, sort of rising up a community without gentrifying a community. And I'm going to give a few examples of that. To maximize the benefits of the arts for people and community, connection to the local community is key. And in fact, research shows that the arts' impact in communities are greater in low-income communities even than wealthier communities when the arts are locally rooted. Here's some examples in North Minneapolis of locally rooted community development. Murals, information sharing using art as the vehicle for talking about community issues and ideas and possibilities. Coming out of our buildings and onto the streets to connect with people where they are. This is an image from Flow, a Northside Arts Crawl, which is our community's annual arts crawl. It'll be July 25th and 26th this year. Please come over and check us out along West Broadway. Key to arts-based community development is diversity. Again, researchers have looked at this phenomenon, including diverse people. A broad spectrum of people in the work we do isn't just about doing the right thing or being charitable in our work, right? Diverse groups of creative problem solvers are more effective than homogeneous groups of people. Across the board in any sort of scenario that you could measure, diversity trumps homogeny across the board. So it's really key to rooting the arts in community and utilizing the arts in ways that impact the individuals in the community that are already there. So I'll end with a few questions. As we think about why arts, hopefully we think yes, arts, but before we land on that decision, we should ask ourselves some questions. We should ask, are we bringing together diverse groups of people who live or are deeply rooted in our neighborhood? Are we developing the neighborhood's individual and community capacity in terms of skills, expertise, resources, political, social, economic capital? Are we involving young people in meaningful ways in shaping the future of their community? Again, not from a place of charity, but arguably, young people are the wellspring of creative genius. Important social change anywhere across history has never happened without the energy, exuberance, and risk-taking spirit of young people. So we need young people to be involved in important, relevant, and meaningful ways because it's going to improve what we're trying to do. We should ask ourselves, are we building on history while projecting into the future? And then finally, are we tapping into joy and having fun? Thank you.